Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode for Mars TV. Today, we're joined by Professor Jean Marc Salotti, who's a professor of computer science at the École nationale supérieure de cognitique at Institut Polytechnique de Bordeaux, France, and a member of the International Academy of Astronautics. He holds a Master's of Space Studies as well as a PhD in computer science, and his main research interest includes human systems integrations with applications in collaborative robotics and manned space missions. He's particularly focused on manned missions to Mars. Professor, welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
Thank you for giving us your time today. I'm very excited to talk to you about your work and experience. But before we go into that, please tell us about your career and experience and how you get to do what you do now.
Well, I think in 2000, more or less 2000, I read the book The Case for Mars from Robert Zubrin, who is the founder, of the Mars Society. And so it was a very interesting book. Robert Zubrin was saying that it is possible to go to Mars and to stay there. So, but of course, there are more questions than answers. So I wanted to understand more if it is really possible to go to Mars and to stay on Mars, to colonize Mars, to settle Mars. And so I worked on that. And finally, after several years of understanding and reading, I published a paper on a new way, it is called the 242 concept, how to go to Mars. Well, anyway, so it was the first paper, but then it was I think it was in 2011, something like that. And then I worked more and I published many more papers. I joined a group from the International Academy of Astronautics, a group working on a synthesis of the works that have been carried out on human missions to Mars, and I co-published a big report from the International Academy of Astronautics on that. So, and I of course, I'm going to the conference. There are different conferences on space, on astronautics, and I meet there all the people, NASA people, and people from all over the world working on astronautics, and therefore also on human missions to Mars. And so I publish papers, I'm presenting my work, and I meet other people on that subject.
So let's start then from the beginning, since you said that the first publication you had talked about the 242 concept. Can you please tell us more about it and how it aims to achieve going to Mars?
Okay, the 242 concept is based on a very simple idea, because the main problem probably of the human missions to Mars is the mass, the huge mass of all the vehicles, because in the NASA reports, because I've read in the huge NASA reports, and it was said that they had to assemble a giant rocket in orbit and then send astronauts to Mars, but several huge rockets had to be assembled in orbit. It was very complex, and so I was not convinced it was the best idea. So I proposed a reduction of the crew, 2 people only, 2 astronauts, but 2 is too little. So okay, let's double. So the idea was to send 2 rockets with 2 astronauts on board. So 2 for 2 is the idea. 2 times 2 astronauts are sent to Mars in 2 different rockets. But once they are on Mars, they join again. So there are 4 on Mars. So it is a 2, 4, and 2 again on the way back to the Earth. So this was the idea.
And how is this? You said that it is you looked at NASA's plans, and then you saw how they're proposing it. So can you please tell us more? How is it different from how NASA is doing it, and or at least any private company like SpaceX? Is it just by I'm assuming it's not just the number of people, but the concept of operations would be different?
Okay. Well, NASA published, I think, 3 huge reports on how to go to Mars. The first one was in 1997, and in this report, well, it was very complex. I think it was well, we wanted to send 5 or 6 astronauts. I don't, well, 5 or 6, and it was very complex. As I told you, they wanted to assemble in orbit 3 giant rockets, and the assembly is very complex because you have to send two giant rockets if you want, and assemble one other rocket to send to Mars, and 3 times this, 3 assemblies if you want of rockets. So this is very complex, and also the entry, descent, and landing phase when you want to land on Mars was very risky, and it was said in the report. And so at the end, well, as you know, it was a huge report. Everything was said in the report, but well, it has not been financed and it has not been decided to go to Mars. So the Americans have not sent anyone to Mars. Then there was another report in 2009, and there was another one in 2014. So 3 huge reports. Each time, more, it was different report, different architecture, different. But each time, 5 or 6 people sent to Mars. Each time, huge assembly of rockets in orbit. Each time, it was not financed because too complex, too risky. It was too long. It's not a good idea. So really, not a good idea. So this was the reason why I suggested the 242 concept. And I published another paper, in fact, also in 2014, I think, or 16 perhaps. Anyway, it was more or less the same missions as NASA suggested, but with a reduction of the crew to 3 astronauts instead of 5 or 6. And 3 astronauts it's very interesting because if you do that, well, you can send in one rocket. You can send the 3 astronauts to Mars. It is at the limit of the capacity of the rocket, but it is feasible according to my calculations. So it means that it is really much simpler, much simpler and affordable. Really affordable if we can send 3 astronauts to Mars, or the 242 concept, more or less, if you want. But anyway, 3 astronauts would be the key idea, according to my calculation, once again, to simplify everything and to send and to organize that mission and to send the 3 astronauts to Mars. And so honestly, I think it's a pity that NASA did not really think about reducing the crew, going to 3. Even I think it's much better to have 2 times 3 astronauts rather than one huge rocket with 6 astronauts on board, because there is also the entry, descent, and landing. And the bigger you are, the heavier you are, the more dangerous, the riskier it is, and the more complex, and well, it's not affordable anymore. So well, it's a pity, I think. Really, I'm quite disappointed when I'm thinking about this, because I think Americans should be on Mars since 2010. I think we are late. They made mistakes. Really, I think so. I think they really made mistakes.
Do you think it's the idea that we are not there on Mars? What are the obstacles so far that we have that is slowing down the process? Or is it, for example, like NASA is a very, very, very big organization with lots of funding. So I can see why you would say that they should have been there long time ago. Is it, for example, how big NASA is the reason why it's like lots of bureaucracy there's not standard policy. Every administration that comes kind of changes the tone. Sorry, talk about
That's a good question. So, okay, of course, I try to understand why they did not understand that they made mistakes. And so the reason is that, well, several reasons, but the first one is the way they work. I think you have, a mission to Mars is very complex, and you need people that who are specialists in, for instance, engines, propulsion systems, trajectories. Other people who are experts in, let's say, human factors. Okay, other people are more about, the biology and life support systems. And other people are in computer science, and so on and so on. And in fact, these people are experts in their fields, but they don't know anything about the other fields. So I think when you want to, this is what happened. I think when the one person in charge of defining the mission, the architecture of the mission, when he had to define everything, well, he asked one person in charge of propulsion systems, please, can you tell me what is the best propulsion system for going to Mars? And another person, okay, can you tell me the number of persons, the number of astronauts that is the best number to go to Mars? And another one, can you tell me the best trajectory? And another one, can you tell me the best life support system, and so on. So the persons who were in charge of defining the right number of astronauts, they said, okay, I think we believe that 5 or 6 is the minimum, probably the minimum. So the experts, okay, so we have the number now, and they asked all the other people, okay, we have the number, so life support, please, you have to determine how many resources are needed for 5 or 6 people. And the others, okay, this is the mass of the payload. Okay, we need everything this. Please, what is the best rocket to send humans and everything to Mars? We know the mass of everything. You have to determine the propulsion system for that. And for the entry, descent, and landing, okay, we have that mass. We have to land that mass on Mars. Okay, let's tell us what is the best strategy to land 100 tons on Mars. And that's it. This is the way they work. But this is wrong. As I told you, this is wrong, because you have to understand that the number of astronauts is very important. And as I told you, I think it's better to have 2 crews of 3 rather than 1 crew of 6, especially if you want to simplify everything. And well, that's not so, this is an easy answer, of course. Maybe it's more complex than that, but I think my understanding was this. And now you have, for instance, Elon Musk, who is saying, okay, let's send dozens of astronauts at the same time, and so on. But he has a completely different approach. And his approach is not that complex, in fact, because he doesn't want to assemble anything. He just wants to send a huge vehicle and refuel the vehicle and send it to Mars in but 1 vehicle only, no assembly in low Earth orbit. Anyway, I still believe that perhaps Elon Musk is wrong. This is my personal understanding. I'm not sure. I hope I'm wrong. But I personally think that he may succeed in sending his spaceship to Mars, but the problem could be the entry, descent, and landing, and also the comeback, when the return to the Earth could be also very difficult, because he has a huge vehicle, and landing would be difficult. But even if he succeeds in landing a vehicle, then you also have the problem, of launching the vehicle from Mars. So a huge vehicle, well, you have to refuel everything. Well, it's going to be complex. So anyway, we will see what happens. But I think if a reduction of the crew to 3 astronauts, at least for the first mission, could be the best approach, I think, to succeed.
So you said that it's for the first mission. I guess we are talking about first manned mission. Do you see unmanned missions prior to sending those 3 astronauts? What kind of setup needs to happen before those 3 astronauts get there?
Yes, I published a paper on the roadmap, which what roadmap is appropriate to go to Mars. And first of all, probably the most important is the qualification of entry, descent, and landing systems. These are probably the riskiest. It will be the riskiest phase of the mission, probably. So I think we need one or perhaps several missions just to test, to qualify the entry, descent, and landing systems. So, and this should be unmanned, of course. We are not going to make tests with people on board. So the problem is, okay, imagine we have to land a huge vehicle on Mars. Okay, what can we do with that if there is nobody on board? So the idea could be to have, for instance, sample return, or at least to send robots. So of course we can send robots and something inside, so that if we succeed, that if the landing is successful, well, we can the robots can explore Mars, or even perhaps we can also try to return some samples from the Martian surface. So these are the first category of missions, just to qualify the entry, descent, and landing systems. And the second point is the training of astronauts. Before going to Mars, if we want to send astronauts in a habitable module, that habitable module must be qualified for a long flight. It's going to be a long flight. You know, the mission to Mars it could be almost 3 years. You know, so it's a very long time. So we are not going to send astronauts in a habitable module that has been tested for 1 month. We should test the module a very long time. So, of course, we can do it in Earth orbit, so that we can have access and rescue them if necessary. So, what we need is also to qualify that habitable module, and at the same time, we can qualify also, or qualify the procedures, if you want, for communication, for rescue if necessary, and life support, of course, on board the habitable module. We make sure that everything works a long time, and human factors also can be tested, and you know, they have to, because astronauts, of course, will be stressed if they have to stay a long time in orbit, and so on. So these are the 2 important missions that are required before going to Mars with people, you know. And there are many other things, of course, to do. For instance, rovers have to be tested and so on. But most elements, most objects and systems can be tested on Earth. So apart from these 2 missions, I think, of course, we also have to qualify the rocket. But I told you, when we qualify the entry, descent, and landing systems, at the same time, we will qualify also the launch and the transit to Mars and so on. So, and of course, the return. We also have to qualify at least one time the launch from Mars, so like to make sure that we are able to send people back to Earth. One last thing, because these are the qualifications, but it is also very important, and NASA also suggested this. We can send the return rocket. We can send it before the manned mission, before the start. I mean, for instance, we can launch and send the rocket that is it's going to be used for the return. We can send it before, 2 years before, for instance. 2 years before. So we send the return rocket before, and once we are sure that it's in Mars orbit, everything is prepared, is okay, then okay, we send now the astronauts to Mars, but the return is okay. It's always, we already have in Mars orbit the rocket that can be used for the return. So this is a backup, you know. So it's very important to have some backups, and also we can send to a Martian surface the Mars ascent vehicle, and also we can also send a habitable module, a complementary habitable module, a second one if you want, before the first crew is sent. Just assets to make sure that everything is going to work. So this is what we can do to prepare the human mission.
And do you see that such a human mission would happen? So, for example, in relation to the 242 concept,
Yeah.
do you see that just to clarify, the 2 astronauts and 2 other astronauts, are they going at the same time, or is there time difference between them?
They're going at the same time.
Okay.
They're going at the same time, yes.
And
at the same time, of course, not exactly at the same time. It's impossible. Yeah. Well, I mean, for instance, one day just after the other, they can be launched a few days, not with the same launch pad, but with different launch pads. For instance, they can be sent at the same time, more or less. Yes, perhaps one day after that, after the other.
And how long do you imagine a crew can stay and sustain itself on Mars before it has to get back?
Well, this is known thanks to the orbits of Mars and the Earth. We know that every 2 years and 2 months there is a window to send a rocket to Mars. So this is the same for the return, every 2 years and 2 months. So when we send astronauts to Mars, it takes 8 months, 6 to 8 months to go to Mars. Then we land the astronauts on Mars, and they have to stay there. I think it's about 1,000 days before the return, and the return will take also 8 months.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so basically the 242 concept is specific to manned missions, but not colonization or settlement, correct? Because you wrote a paper about the minimum number of settlers, but that's a different question, right?
Oh yes, this is another paper.
Okay.
Yes, it's another paper. Yeah, for a settlement, I don't recommend, because in my paper I recommend. Well, I just said that it was the minimum number of settlers to survive, but I hope we're not going to survive, but to live on Mars, not to survive only. So, and yes, perhaps 242 concept is not appropriate. In fact, perhaps 3 astronauts could be. I told you there is another paper in which I said that 3 astronauts, a crew of 3 is also possible. And perhaps we can multiply the number of 3, the crew of 3, concept. We can send 3 astronauts at a time and many rockets like that. The idea is that it could be very simple. If there are 3 astronauts in the rocket, you send the rocket directly to Mars. So very simple. The 3 astronauts are die to Mars, because if you think about the Elon Musk concept, or the SpaceX concept, of course you have many more people, but it's more complex because you have to wait that there is the refueling in orbit. So it's some time. It's more complex that if you have the refueling and so on. Of course, there are more people, and maybe it's the future, but at least for the minimum, well, for the simplest idea is to send 3 astronauts at a time to Mars and multiply this strategy.
So I always wonder that there are these plans and aspirations for Mars, which is much further away. It's much more dangerous. It's a longer term, and we still have the moon. Do you think that, how is it that people are not taking advantage of being on the moon first to test all of this before going to Mars? Are these 2 different questions? Does the experience we have on the moon will translate, but only in particular aspects to the experience we will have on Mars. It feels like the focus is on Mars, even though it's the hardest. But we still didn't even colonize the moon.
That's a complex question. Okay, it's very interesting to go to the moon too, of course, and I think we can try to go to the moon too. But the problem with the moon, there are different problems. First problem, you know, the day lasts 28 days, if I can say it, you know, because the daylight, if you want, the daylight, it's 20 days, and then you have 20 days for the dark. With the you can't see the sun. So this is a problem, you know. If you stay in the dark during a long period of time, well, you can also go at the pole, so why not? It's a good idea also to go at the pole so that we can have some more light, perhaps. Another important problem with the moon is the lack of important resources. For instance, in the Martian atmosphere, you have CO2, carbon dioxide, which can be used to, for instance, to produce methane. It's a good propellant for the rockets, and you can extract also oxygen for the atmosphere for breathing. For the moon, you don't have carbon dioxide. You have everything more or less, but in in smaller concentrations in the rocks. So it's more difficult to exploit the rocks of the moon than it is to exploit the resources of Mars. And even for water, you know, water is very important. And perhaps there are some ice in some craters of the moon, but not in large quantities. And finally, if you think about settlement on the moon and settlement on Mars, maybe it's more difficult to settle the moon than it is to settle Mars. An important point that is not well understood is that according to calculations, I mean, for the propulsion system that is required to go to the moon and the propulsion system that is required to go to Mars, more or less they are the same. Because once we leave the gravity well of the Earth, because more or less to go to the moon, you need something like, you need the escape velocity, and you also have to slow down to land on the moon. And to go to Mars, you also need, of course, the escape velocity, a little bit more, of course, to go to Mars. But then you can exploit the atmosphere of Mars for braking and to slow down and land on Mars. Why you can't do that on the moon? So finally, the amount of propellant that is required to go to the moon is more or less the same than the amount of propellant that is required to go to Mars. Of course, you need much more food, water, everything, because it's much longer. But apart from that, more or less, you have the same payload. If you have the same the same energy requirements to go there. So this is an important point. So. But of course, I think it's also interesting to go to the moon. Another important point is that because the moon, the gravity of the moon is much less than the one of Mars, which is also much less than the Earth. But it's very important to understand that the moon is very different than Mars. It is very different. You can not really make simulations on the moon to prepare for Mars. You can make simulations, but for organization, for instance, how to organize everything, communication, human factors. Okay, organization is clearly it's very interesting to go to the moon, but the dust is not the same. The atmosphere is not the same. Gravity is not the same. So be careful when you are using rovers, for instance, on the moon, and you would like to use them on Mars. Be careful; it's not the same gravity, so not the same. So we have to be careful about that, and maybe we can also train on the Earth. Maybe it's more efficient to train on the Earth for the rovers. I mean, Even though, of course, it's always interesting to test, to make tests in different environments, of course. But you have to be careful about the differences, the huge differences between the Moon and Mars. So the Moon can be interesting for the preparation, but it's not mandatory, if you want, to go to the Moon before going to Mars.
So let's talk a little bit about your book. There is one interesting aspect that you mentioned that I thought was I've never stumbled upon it before reading what you wrote, is the conflict between the crew on Mars and the Earth control. I thought that was an interesting part, that we talk a lot about the issues and challenges of going on a long-term mission like Mars, but we never talk about this in particular and the psychological aspects and the behavioral challenges that would come because of such a long-term mission. So can you please tell us some more about that?
Okay, there are experts in human factors. I personally know Nick Canas, for instance, who is an expert in that field, and there were many studies on that subject. Since the Mir space station, or of course the ISS, also Skylab was a very important mission. So we know that it's very complex. The relationship between the mission control and the crew is very complex. And Skylab especially, because I remember for the Skylab experiment, they had some troubles. NASA got some troubles with the crew, because they wanted the crew to work hard and to solve all the problems that were on board the Skylab station. And at some point, the crew was exhausted and said to mission control, sorry, but we have to take a break. So sorry, we make a break, and then we contact you in a few minutes later. So it was, they they cut the communications. So it was a big trouble. But anyway, so we understand. We have there were some experiments, there are some studies about this, and I told you that this was also an experiment that has to be conducted, in Earth orbit. A long stay in Earth orbit, and we have to understand really that relationship, and to train the crew, but to train also mission control, because they have to understand how to help the astronauts and how to understand their mind, their problems. So yeah, this is important. So we have to make tests for sure. We have to train the astronauts. We have to train mission control, and yes, for Mars it is also more important because, of course, there are communication delays. And it's something like 10 minutes, 20 minutes. It depends, but it's really long delays. So no real-time communication between mission control on Earth and the crew on Mars. So of course, the autonomy of the crew will be much more important. And but this has to be tested for sure. And when I said that the experiments with the crew in Earth orbit, we can test that communication delay. We can impose that, okay, no direct communication with the Earth. I'm sorry, but we can do, of course, but no, just for the test, we impose that you do not contact us with real-time communication. Always delays, because we will have delays on Mars. So yes, it's very important. We have to make tests to make sure to understand all the problems, the stress, of course, because it could be a stress that not to be able to contact a person and to talk to someone on Earth. They would have to talk to only the crew on Mars. That's all, and over communication will be with delays. So is messages, and that's all. So it could be a problem. We have to make tests, of course. Yes.
So speaking about the human factors, you've worked on the robotics and the integration of system robotics. Do you see any way where it can help with or assist in long-term missions, especially when it comes to manned missions?
Okay, this is an important big problem or big topic, if you want. The use of robots and automation. In the space domain, it is well known that there were many problems with not with robots, but with automated systems. And for instance, probably you are aware that when there is a crew going to the ISS, there is a person in charge of the docking with the ISS, and that person always make it with the manual docking, because the automatic docking exists, but they want to be to go with manual, and because the problem with automated systems is that they can fail, and if there is a failure, if there's a system failure, well, we should be able to change to manual in order to solve the problems. So so yes, automating all the systems or many systems is very important, but we should be able to disconnect the automated systems and to change to manual, and so that we can not rely on these systems, because perhaps we can fail. You know, there are so many reasons to fail. So this is an important problem. But of course, automation is very important, and because they can reduce the tasks of the astronauts and make it much easier, of course. So yes, but we have to find a trade-off, more or less a trade-off in the number of automated systems and the number of tasks that have to be performed by the astronauts. So this is a complex problem, and we also have to work on that to make sure that well, we can still come back to manual systems and simplify the life of astronauts with automated systems. So it's a complex problem, it's a complex problem. And robots, of course, can be used also, robots, especially, for instance, I can think about an important problem on Mars is the refueling of the rocket. And I think we need robots for that, because it will be very difficult if humans had to do the refueling. I mean, to take some I don't know, to take some because you have to extract the carbon and the oxygen from the atmosphere or the rocks, and the water also can be also extracted. So there exist some systems to extract the water from the rocks or from the layers deep below the surface. We can use robots, of course, and we must use robots, but these robots should be easy to repair in case there are some problems. So this is an important issue: how to design robots such that they can be easily repaired and maintained. So that because this is very important. If there's a failure and it's not possible to repair them, well, hopefully there is no impact on the mission, because otherwise, because we must succeed. Of course, failures are not an option.
So is this then can you explain, is this related to the out of the loop syndrome?
It's also yes, it's yes, good. It's a good concept. You have heard about the out of the loop syndrome. Yes, this is well known, a well-known cause of human error when when humans are out of the loop. That is, if they don't perceive, if they don't follow what's happening with the systems, and suddenly there is a system that fails, and they have to change to manual. And if they are not aware of what happened before, what is the current state of the situation, and well, of course, if they are out of the loop in this case, and they can fail of course, if it do not understand the current situation. So yes, out of the loopers, that I think they should be trained. Yeah, you know, and we should conceive the system so that we can avoid the out of the loop syndrome. Yes.
And you conducted research with the IMS laboratory at the Octus team to minimize the risks associated with the understanding the relationship between humans and robots. Is this also considered part of that research? Can you please tell us more about this?
Well, I worked, I think, for robots for industry. So it's a broad topic. So,
okay.
But yes, it is also related, of course. So because this is about how to use robots and at the same time reducing the risks of not necessarily an accident, going to an accident, but it's possible just to have if there is an error, human error, of course. For instance, a procedure can fail, and an object can be broken. So, and for instance, you can have your experiment that fails, and so you don't have scientific returns. So maybe it's not always the death of the astronaut, but it could be the mission that is not as successful as it was expected.
So you wrote a novel.
Sorry?
So you wrote a book.
Oh, yes.
Yes. I would love to hear more about this and how your experience shaped the narrative in the book.
Okay, it's a science fiction book first, and it's really science fiction. But I tried. It's hard science fiction. It means that I try to respect the science, you know, and technology, the current state of the technology, and what we know about science. So, for instance, it's not when they go to Mars, it's 6 to 8 months, so it's not 3 days or okay. Also, I tried to also for the life support. Well, for everything, I try to respect the science and technology. The idea behind that book, it was to also to understand myself, to better understand what are the challenges of a human mission to Mars. Because when you write a book and you try to of course to imagine all the problems that can happen on Mars, and so it makes you think about these problems and also the possible solutions. So in fact, writing that book, it helped me understand all the challenges that they have to face, and to better understand everything more or less
from a human perspective.
Yeah,
like
so
putting yourself in the human shoes.
But of course, if I can also write a book that can be very interesting for others, well, but it was also a good, I think, an idea to I can help a lot scientists like me to understand many different questions that did not come to my mind at first time. So it helped me, and I'm also writing a second book now.
I was gonna ask you if I read somewhere that you have been writing a second book, and I wasn't sure if it was published.
Yeah, it's almost finished. Not now, but it's almost finished. It's about the settlement, the first settlement of Mars. So how to settle Mars. So I was inspired, of course, by Zubrin, but also with the famous book. Maybe you have heard about the book from Kim Stanley Robinson. The Mars, the red Mars, green Mars, and blue Mars. It was also very inspiring, and it's another book, of course, a different story, different way to address and to talk about it. So, but once again, it helped me understand all the problems they have to face, they will have to face on Mars with the possible settlement, and especially when you have, for instance, 100 people, because 6 people is okay, is something, but 100 people is completely different. So and how to go from 100 to more, and how to, also how to go from 10 to 100 is also a big problem. So I try to address these issues and to write a science fiction book. And it's also, it should be I try to also to avoid now perhaps too many too much science, because there were some people telling me that it was too technical. My first book was too technical, so maybe I had to focus more on a story.
I actually, interesting that you're mentioning this, because that's exactly what I wanted to ask you. As a scientist and professor who worked in this as in the technical sense, how were you able to balance between the technical issues and the narrative of the writing? Have you always wanted to be a writer?
Yes, maybe a little bit. I think when I was young, I tried to write also already a novel, but then I stopped. But I coming back to to these ideas. But this is true. This is true. It is always a trade-off between the narrative and science and technical things. And I perhaps always have to fight against me to, to avoid the technical. I want to tell the others something about, but no, technical is not interesting. I have to throw everything away.
But this is what I also wanted to ask you. What was the an engineering problem that you had, and you needed to explain it technically, but you had to you had to narrate it? Like, what was one aspect of the novel that you thought that you had to you had challenges in how to narrate it? Is there anything from within the
Yeah.
novel that you thought that was difficult to explain to someone who is not a technical person and just reading the novel?
Okay, what I tried, in fact, in the first book, is to add a small paragraph introducing each chapter, and a technical paragraph at the beginning of each chapter. And in this paragraph, it was nothing about the story. It was technical thing, only some lines about the technical things. So this was the idea. But sometimes I forgot to. There was a kind of duplication of in the text and in that paragraph, because I wanted to tell everything, and sometimes it was said twice. and so yes, I had to, as I told you, I have to fight against me to avoid the technical things. So I think it was a good idea to put the technical thing in that paragraph, but it's also very difficult because in some chapters there is nothing technical. In some other chapters there are many technical things. So it was not very easy to follow that strategy, to have for each chapter a technical introductory paragraph. Anyway, this is the problem. Yeah, this is the problem. Explain the things. I think it's a good idea, because I had this idea when I read a French writer. Well, maybe you don't know him. So, but anyway, so there are some people who had that strategy. So it inspired me. I tried to follow that idea, but it was very difficult to do this. So in the second book, I tried to. Well, I think I tried to remove the technical things finally, because of course. I think all people who read my book, first book, they said that it was the end, the 50th, the last percent of the book were interesting, because this is where the things happened. The story is the danger is present, and there is a threat. Okay. They wanted to read that part, but the first part which I think is also very interesting. It should be very interesting because it's the way we have to start the mission, to prepare the mission to Mars. So it should be interesting, but there's nothing happening. Nothing is happening. It's the selection process, it's the training, but okay, but they. When you read a book, you wonder, someone is going to be killed, someone is going to, there is love, there is and so on. So okay, but I try to do this in the second book.
But you will also find people that would say, you know what, I wish it was a little bit more technical. So there is
Yes,
no shortage of people interested in particular topics, especially when it comes to space. I find that that there are books that their essence and their value is because it's technical. When you have to be able to explain the technical aspects to someone who is not, but they can still understand it, I think that's a great achievement already, because someone can, like, who said that if you can't explain something to your grandmother, you don't really understand it yourself. So the fact that you were able to write a novel and now there is a second one, I hope that they're in English. I haven't read the first one, but is it translated?
translate it in English. Yes, I should
Yeah.
do that. Now we have many tools that can do that. So maybe, yeah.
Okay. I hope so. I would be excited to read it. I also would like to ask you about your research. You've overseen projects like the Mars Explore, which simulated vehicle control on Mars and the communication between the driver and the commander. I was wondering if there were any insights that you have seen from this practical experience that could benefit in the extreme environments. It's one thing to do it on Earth, and it's another probably to do it in an extreme environment.
I think it's an interesting experiment for training astronauts and better understanding the communication issues between the mission control and the crew. Yes, I think it can be used even with real astronauts. Could be interesting. There are some tools that are used by human factors experts. I've heard about a bioengineering tool called homeostat, which is a tool to assess the efficiency of the collaboration between people. And Mars Explorer could be another tool, interesting tool that can be used to assess also this collaboration process and communication. Also, I think it's another tool. Well, yes, it can be used. Maybe I should propose it to the how to say a Cologne, the astronaut center, to Thomas Pesquet, the, the French astronaut. Maybe we can propose that tool to them. Perhaps it would be it could be interesting. Yes, perhaps. I think, but it's another tool. That's all. We need many tools, of course, many tests, many experiments to train, to test the communication issues. Of course, it's very important, very, very important human factors. So yes, I think we should definitely carry on studies on that topic. And I'm still using that Mars Explorer, but at ENSC, my engineering school here. So it's for practice there for the students. It's very they like it. So it's interesting. So we have some feedback. So it's interesting to use that experiment. Yeah.
So you mentioned before that it is important for the human to be integrated within the robotic system and the automation. With the AI now and with the advancement of AI, how much what are things that you are comfortable having the AI take over as autonomous and is independent? Because obviously, for example, in a manned mission of 3 astronauts, maybe they can't keep track of all of the things that they have to be aware of. So how much autonomy do you feel it would be okay for AI? What tasks can the AI take over right now? Or do you think there's still more advancement and we're still not there yet?
I think we are still not there yet. Well, AI actually can propose answers to complex questions, but uh, uh, they cannot replace and do things. So if you don't ask questions, AI don't do anything. AI doesn't do anything. So I think
And you need to ask the right questions
proactive,
too.
proactive. They should try to be proactive, but it does not exist yet. So I think there are people working on that, but at the moment, AI are more assistant. They are assistants, really good assistants, but they're not proactive, so they cannot really make the mission. They cannot. If there is a problem, they are not going to solve the problem because they are not asked to solve it. So we still need people, but at the moment, maybe in a few years, I don't know, but at the moment, um, I guess they're not able to be proactive and to replace astronauts. So but what is very important perhaps to use AI is when you settle Mars, or even if there is a crew of 3 perhaps, is that there is a lot of knowledge inside. I could say the inside AI that can be used to solve the problem. For instance, imagine that there is a wheel that breaks down of the rover, and so the astronaut could ask, can you tell me the different industrial processes that are needed to produce a new wheel? Okay, they will propose something. AI could perhaps propose something, and so that you can use it. But the astronaut ask the problem, ask the question, and AI answered. But it does not solve the problem. It just give you the procedure to solve the problem. So and then you can. Well, I think you still have to think about what exactly you can do, what you can't, and so on. So, but this is the way we can use AI. I think it would be very interesting to solve the problems once you're on Mars and with full autonomy, especially because we can't have experts in all fields on Mars. So, for instance, someone who is expert in mechanical engineering doesn't know a lot of things about life support systems, but he can ask the AI, okay, can you tell me how to change the oxygen converter and so on? Okay. And it will perhaps the AI will answer the question. So it's very important so that we can have people on Mars who can be, thanks to AI, who can be experts in all fields, more or less. Well, not technical, but even perhaps technical. We could be difficult, but we can have the procedure at least. Well, here is the procedure. Maybe it's not enough. I don't know. In some cases, it could be difficult, but well, there is a procedure. It's already something.
Before we end, because I would want to be respectful of your time, how do you find the space industry and space market now? I'm with your experience, I'm sure you have seen the times when it was getting there, but now it's booming. How do you see it, and how do you find that it's gonna what's the next vision that you think that the space market will reach? Do you think that we're getting faster to be on Mars? Do you think it's how do you think it's functioning?
I think probably the most important event actually is the rise of the Chinese program, space program. So thanks perhaps to Chinese, there will be a competition between, of course, the United States and China, and this could help a lot in going to Mars. So at the same time, Europeans, well, still, I think they are still behind, very far behind. But who knows? Well, we can, of course, we can also collaborate with Americans, for instance, or China. I don't know, but so this I think could be could help a lot. But otherwise, yes, of course, there is Elon Musk, but I think well, SpaceX, in fact, would certainly be the financed by NASA, in fact, because this is my understanding. So yes, SpaceX could probably be sponsored by NASA, but we should not. We should be afraid of the possible failures that could come. I told you about the entry, descent, and landing systems. Could really be a complex problem, and maybe we could face very complex problems, and maybe we will have to change a lot of things, including perhaps the concept of the space, the Starship. So I don't know. I'm not sure, but I think there are still many problems to solve, and you know, next week I will go to Roma in Italy, and there is the conference in astronautics. I will present my work on entry, descent, and landing options. What is the best option? But one of the most important conclusion is that the number of tests that have to be done to qualify the entry, descent, and landing systems, or to achieve to reach the required maturity level, the number of tests could be very important. For instance, 20 tests. So imagine you have to make 20 tests for the qualification of entry, descent, and landing systems. So each time for each of these tests, nobody on board, just send a huge rocket to Mars, and just make a test. Well, if this is true, of course, it's the end of the mission, because nobody is going to spend billions of dollars or billions of euros just for a test. So this is a very important question. How many tests are required? And I'm afraid it could be a lot. So there are, of course, I'm presenting also the solutions. so there are different ways to reduce that number, but we should really address these problems now. Otherwise, we are never going to Mars. So, and it could be a problem for SpaceX if they suddenly they understand that they need lots of tests for qualification, because you are not going to send astronauts to the death with 30% of probability of death. It will be, of course, terrible and not acceptable. So we should reduce that number to, I don't know, 1% maximum. So reducing that number to 1% is could be very difficult. So anyway, if you're interested, paper.
Yes, please. And I guess that in order to achieve as many number of tests as possible, we have to reduce the cost of conducting the tests. So I guess
yes, we can do many things in the Earth atmosphere. Well, we can do many things, but the two key ideas, I think, is reduce the mass of the vehicle, because if you have a huge vehicle, it's more difficult to control and so on. This is my first recommendation: reduce the mass. So we come back to 2 or 3 astronauts at a time, for instance, for each vehicle, so you can reduce the vehicle. And my second recommendation is perhaps to use a rescue system, individual rescue system. It is possible. It's not always a solution to save the astronaut, but it could be a solution for, especially if, for instance, the vehicle is not controllable anymore, but it's not exploded and it's at 12 kilometers above the Martian surface. Perhaps it is still time to eject the astronauts and to use the rescue systems. If this is the case, there is another paper I wrote in which I proposed a preliminary rescue system. Individual, well, it's very simple. It's a small rocket just below the chair, because they have to of course the astronauts have to stay on chairs, for instance, and so you eject the chair, and then so you have a parachute and a small rocket system inside for the last phase of the landing. But it's possible, and of course you have to wear a spacesuit this time. But it's possible. But it's complex. It's difficult. Perhaps not a good solution. I don't know, but I think it's one of the ideas, because if you can avoid the death of the astronaut in case of the failure of the entry-distance landing systems, well, it's very important. Okay, it doesn't work, but the astronaut is safe on the surface. So it's very important. So if you can reduce the criticality of the failure, it's very important.
And sorry, one last question before I let you go. What are the projects that you're currently working on, and how can people interact and see more of your work?
Well, I try to present my work each time, each year. There is a very important conference called the International Astronautical Congress. This year
IAC.
Yes, IAC is in Australia this year. Well, so I'm not going to attend it for the first time, because I think I attended the last 10 conferences, but this time I will not go. But I'm going to the conference in Italy next week. So it's a European conference, but also a good conference. So and also I'm writing papers on Acta Astronautica and other journals. So this is the way to scientists are working this way. They are trying they make studies, and then they present their studies in papers, and they publish their papers, so we can follow that. And of course, well, there are many other things. Maybe an important thing I didn't tell you is that I'm also a member of the Mars Society, the French chapter of the Mars Society. It is called Association Planète Mars, and I'm vice president of the association. So it's also a way to collaborate between European chapters. We have a conference next November of the European chapters. It will be in Paris. I'm the organizer of the conference. So we will meet with the Austrian chapter, with the Italian chapter, with all the chapters. So hopefully, and we will collaborate. The Austrian chapter, for instance, is asking for collaboration for analog studies. Okay, let's collaborate. It's a good idea. So yes, we work together.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. I'm very grateful. I enjoyed this very much, and I hope we get to talk another time with updates to your work and novel.
Okay, thank you very much.